So this is going to be the last video I plan to make for the class. I'm going to have a few final words for the ethics about ethics, and then yeah. So I want to kind of just remind us of the journey we've taken. There's been one of our first questions is, are there objective moral truths? The next question was, if so, what are they? Now, to address these questions, we've gone and addressed and thought about a number of different ethical theories. Um, and Now, some of these views, error theory, cultural relativism, simple subjectivism, they end up just saying there are no objective moral truths. Error theory just says there's no moral truth at all. Now, that's one view you could take away from this class, or any of these three non-objectivist theories. Um, and and if so, I mean that might be the lesson you take. Now, some of you will have been convinced of the objections to each of these theories, and might instead accept some sort of objectivist view. Maybe this morality that's independent of our feelings is from God, divine command theory, or maybe it's all about maximizing good consequences. And if you're a utilitarian, you'd say maximizing happiness in the world. Or you might say it's about following certain rules, like being able to live according to a maxim that you can universalize consistently without contradiction. Or it could be about never using people as a mere means. So these are different theories. And I hope each of these theories, these objectivist theories, if you're an objectivist, they help you think a little bit more critically about ethical questions. Too much in our culture, it just says, um, ethics, just whatever you think, whatever you feel, whatever. And maybe they're meaning simple subjectivism, but if you're adept at thinking about these theories, you can be a little more critical about, is this right or wrong? We can ask, what would the utilitarian say? Is this creating lots of suffering? And if you think about it, that's what Marquis does. Marquis is asking, oh, we're taking away a future like ours, okay? And so we're not maximizing utility or happiness. On the other hand, you might think kind of like Thompson does and says, well, the fetus doesn't have a right to the use of the mother's womb. And that's where she's actually thinking more categorically, right? She's not thinking about how much happiness will be in the fetus's future or whether it'll have a future like ours. She's thinking, well, that fetus doesn't have the right to the use of the mother's womb. She's kind of being used as an end in herself, right? So what we can do is, in thinking about these various theories, we can think more critically and know how to think about them with these tools. And sometimes they come into conflict. I want to note that some students, I know some of you even wrote to me saying, if you only had to be plugged in to the violinist for 1 minute, it's permissible for you to unplug. I want you to think about this, though. If you're walking along and there's a drowning boy, do you think that it'd be permissible for you to ignore the drowning child? Most students will say no. So there's a little bit of a tension for some of you as students. Do you want to say we are obligated to stay hooked up for at least an hour? If so, why not say that we're obligated to? If not, then why not say that we're not obligated to save the child, and then vice versa? If you think we're obligated to the child, save the child. Don't you think we're obligated to stay hooked up to the violinist for at least an hour? Here, what we see coming in conflict is thoughts about consent and rights from the second categorical imperative, and thoughts about utility and what's going to maximize happiness and unhappiness. Now, the point of one main point I want you to get out of this is, well, we have these critical thinking tools to think more clearly about these issues. But number two, it's going to be hard to know when to use which, and sometimes they'll seem to come into conflict. Now, when you do that, you might be tempted to just be like, oh, there's no right answer. Some of you might even take that literally and say, we should just become error theorists and believe there is no right and wrong. I want you to resist that temptation for this reason. It's true that it's sometimes hard to know how to think about these ethical considerations and then come up with a right answer of whether something's right or wrong. But that's true for the sciences as well. So let's say I'm going to shoot a ball into the air. I'm going to try to calculate where it's going to land. That's really hard to calculate, right? Yeah, I have to calculate the speed of the the strength of the force that initially pushed the ball out. I'll have to also incorporate calculating the effects of gravity and wind resistance, and I'll also have to take in consideration the mass of the ball. It's hard, and there's a lot that goes into it to calculating where the ball is going to land. But we're not going to say, oh, there's just no right answer to where the ball is going to land. We don't do that. We more just say, oh, it's a hard question. We have to take a lot into consideration, and then we try to come up with an answer. And so that leads me to a final view, which is going to be a pluralist view. Or I'll just call it pluralism. Pluralism says, it's a version of ethical objectivism, and it says you have to take into consideration all sorts of things like utility, happiness, whether you're violating rights, whether you can universalize the maxim by which you're asking. And a version of utility pluralism could also take, what does God think about this? And you put all of these into an equation together that'll deliver you the right action. Now, is that easy to determine? No, but it's hard to determine a lot of things in the world, such as where a ball is going to land. So as an ethical objectivist, you could hold one of these individual views, or you could try to take a pluralist view and say some manner of calculating the combination of these things is how you determine right and wrong. And that might be hard to determine, but it's hard to determine a lot of things in the world, and that's just how life is. On the other hand, some of you might still be, after all of this, you might be a hardcore utilitarian, hedonistic utilitarian, or some of you might have thought, no, Kant got it right. It's all about Kant. And now, having one more point about this is, once you get your thoughts clear on which of these views you hold, which of these views you hold, that'll help you determine what's right or wrong about abortion, euthanasia, even things like whether we should, whether it's right to open up businesses or to continue having lockdowns. So so it's good to learn your theory and then you can apply it. And with that, I just want to recommend you, a lot of you bought this book, you didn't just rent it, and there's a lot of really interesting articles that will help you do that. I hope that this ethics class doesn't just end with you learning the ethics in this class and then ending. There's interesting topics about immigration, about racism and affirmative action, about death, the meaning of life, pornography. I would recommend Peter Singer's article, Equality for Animals, Michael Huemer's article on immigration. So these are all really good articles that I recommend you read, and more so. And the goal is to have greater insight, grow as a person, grow as a citizen, become a better ethical thinker, in many of the ways that Michael Sandel, the Harvard lecturer, recommended. Okay, so with that, I hope you'll continue to read more and grow. And thank you for letting me be a part of that process as your professor. That's one of the most enjoyable things for me as a professor, that I can help some students just come along a little bit, grow as a thinker, grow as a person, as a citizen. Thanks so much. If you guys ever want to contact me in the future, just about things going on in life, my email is not going to change anytime soon. So you can email me, and in this last week or two, as we're closing up the semester, feel free to email contact so that we can meet up and talk via Zoom. Good luck as you guys enter your final exam time. And I really wish you well, and take care. So goodbye.